Alright, what is up my homies? And today we're going to be talking about one of the greatest questions that I'm asked all the time, and that is, should I get a certification? And if I do, what certification should I get? So let's just go ahead and jump right in. The first thing to remember about certifications is they're there to provide some sort of benchmark about what your particular knowledge or skill set is. Compared to other professions such as finance or medicine, the IT industry is actually pretty lax when it comes to certifications. However, we're also one of the fastest growing with a huge number of certifications to get, and there's not a lot of consensus on what a particular certification is going to require as far as skill set, knowledge, work experience, education, etc. With all that said, there's a lot of things that we have in common when it comes to certifications. First and foremost, a certification is not an equivalent to education, and it is not an equivalent of experience. It's just supposed to validate a lot of the skills that you claim to have when you put them on a resume. Certifications can go extremely broad spectrum, or they can go to extremely finite specializations. When it comes to earning a certification, typically these are earned through one of two ways. Either you go to a formal training workshop, which is sponsored by whatever the certifying body is, or you earn the certification through taking a proctored certification exam, which usually costs several $100s or more. These certification exams generally are a couple hours or more in length, with some taking up to an entire business day to complete. When it comes to earning a certification, there's generally two different types of certifications you can earn. You can either go with a vendor neutral, or what's sometimes referred to as a vendor agnostic certification, which is generally more theory-based and a little less skills-based. It's usually there to make sure that you understand the why of your doing some sort of task versus how to perform a task on a specific device. A vendor-specific certification will sometimes focus on the exact skills that is necessary to perform a task on a specific piece of equipment versus the underlying knowledge of why you were supposed to be performing a specific task. Some certification branches, although not all of them, will usually follow a progression that is fairly standardized throughout the industry, but again, there are outliers. The entry-level certification is generally for someone who has virtually no work experience but understands the underlying theory and concepts behind what they intend to do for a living. Maybe you've had an internship in a specific field, or you've done a lot of job shadowing, or maybe you haven't worked a day in your life but you have gone to school for this particular task. Entry-level certifications generally are expected to be replaced pretty quickly, and they usually will be followed up with an associate level cert. Associate level certifications are generally for people with about 2 years of work experience. Associate level certifications are usually replaced by professional level certifications, which are generally for people with anywhere between 3 and 7 years of work experience in a particular job field. Professional level certs are generally much more targeted to a specific discipline and a specific area within that discipline, and these are usually your highest end technician positions. After this point, you generally see a lot of certifications taper off, mostly because if you've been in your job more than 7 years, you're likely starting to transition into supervisory and management positions, which have a lot heavier emphasis on wrangling the technicians who work for you, more so than working day to day with the actual equipment at hand. There is a need for people who are extremely specialized in a specific piece of equipment, which is why even beyond the professional level of certifications, you do see either engineer level or architect level certifications. These are a lot less defined than the associate and professional level, with some certification bodies jumping straight from professional to architect, some ignoring architect altogether and terminating at engineer, or some include both. So there's a lot less of a standardization when it comes to these. And again, like I said, this is a general accepted progression, not necessarily used by every single manufacturer or certification body. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump into certifications. So your average entry-level certification is going to be fairly generalized in IT. The most commonly accepted and most heavily recommended certification of any of these is the CompTIA A Plus certification. The A Plus certification is generally a well-rounded help desk technician type of certification, and its goal is to give you the knowledge and skills necessary to fix broken computers and to help people troubleshoot when something is broken. This sort of break-fix type of understanding of a computer system is extremely vital to anyone who works in the IT field. Regardless of whether you're a help desk technician, it still comes in handy to know it, even if you work in cybersecurity, computer networking, or in systems administration. An alternative to the A+ certification, although it's not as widely known and accepted because it's a fairly new certification, is the Google IT Support Professional Cert. Now, just because it has the word professional in it does not mean that it's one of those professional level certifications that usually requires between 3 and 7 years of experience. This is an entry-level certification. It is less intense than the A+ certification, in my personal opinion, but it's more well-rounded because where A+ is supposed to be vendor neutral, it does spend a lot of time focusing on Microsoft Windows environments, whereas the IT Support Professional spends an equal amount of time between Windows and Linux operating systems. Unlike the CompTIA A+ certification, the IT Support Professional is one of the few certifications that you earn through attending a specific training course. This course is provided by Coursera.org, and I am not sponsored by Coursera, but if any one of you watching this works for them, I could use a sponsor. The IT Support Professional is designed to be pursued in your off hours and is a subscription-based training program, meaning that you pay for the amount of time that you are signed up for the course. As a means of seeing whether this was something I wanted to incorporate into the courses that I taught, I decided to devote an entire week that I had off to taking this course, mostly because Coursera offers a 1-week free trial on all of their courses. I actually completed this course in under a week, even though it's designed to take 6 months or more if you're working on it a few hours a night, and I was able to cancel my subscription before my credit card was actually billed. For absolutely free, I walked out with a fairly decent entry-level certification. And another cool perk of the Coursera system is if you pass and complete the IT Support Professional certification, you actually have the ability to sign up for an invitation-only online competition among ITSP completers. And if you are among the top 50 completers, they have some sort of really neat prize. When I participated in this event, I scored in the top 50 competitors nationwide and earned a free CompTIA A+ test voucher. So instead of having to pay the usual, I think it's $400 to take the A+ cert, I was able to get that cert absolutely free. This is an amazing program, and I honestly wish that there were more like it specific to IT in general, but there's few and far between, and while Coursera and Google are improving their number of offerings, this is the only one that is specific to the IT industry right now. Once you have the basic underlying concept of an entry-level cert, it's time to move up into an associate-level cert, which usually means it's time to pick a specialization. If your intent is to specialize as a server administrator, a great certification to look into is the Microsoft Certified Server Administrator, or MCSA Cert. This is not an easy level cert to get. In fact, I would probably put this at more of a professional level cert, mostly due to the fact that it has 3 certification exams that you have to pass in order to earn the cert, and the fact that you are extremely specialized in the Windows Server environment in order to pass these exams. Naturally, this is a Microsoft specific certification, so they don't spend a whole lot of time talking about things like Linux or Apple. A great alternative to the MCSA certification is the CompTIA Server Plus certification. Because it's offered by CompTIA, the Server Plus is more vendor agnostic, which means that they spend a little more time talking about Linux and a little less time talking about the nitty-gritty of Windows. There's not nearly as much information in the Server Plus curriculum, but this is also an associate level cert that we're talking about, so it is a great first step into the server administration job field. A great certification to add on to that would be the Linux Plus certification. Linux Plus is not nearly as easy to get. It requires 2 certification exams to pass, and it generally requires a lot of Linux knowledge, way more than what you're going to get as part of the Server Plus or the ITSP fields. But an increasing number of organizations are starting to abandon the Windows operating system environment and go with Linux due to the overwhelming cost savings of using Linux servers for a variety of tasks. If you're looking more at a virtualization cloud computing type of environment, there is also the CompTIA Cloud Plus certification, although that is going to be specific to organizations organizations that use a lot of cloud computing. If you're in an area where not a lot of organizations are making that change yet, the Cloud Plus may be in lower demand than the other certifications I've mentioned. However, if your organization isn't necessarily using a lot of cloud technology yet, they may still be using a lot of on-site virtualization, which means that you may be looking at something like the VMware VCA or VCP certifications. The VMware certifications require a training course to be completed before you can take the paid proctored certification exam, so it's a lot more difficult to get the VCA or VCP than one of these other certifications that is not nearly as specialized in virtualization, but still includes some knowledge of how virtualization works and needs to be set up. For those of you who don't have a desire to be a server administrator, maybe you're more interested in computer networking, which is the primary focus of this channel after all. If you're looking at entering the computer networking field, then a great entry-level certification is the CompTIA Network Plus Cert. This is another vendor-neutral certification. As it's offered by CompTIA, it's fairly vendor agnostic, and it does do a great job of exposing you to a wide variety of concepts and things that you need to keep in mind when it comes to computer networking. Even if you do not intend to work in computer networking, the Network Plus Cert is still really helpful, especially if you're working in something like cybersecurity, where you still need to know how data in transit functions. If any individual does not have the A Plus certification, then the lowest level networking cert I would recommend would be the Network Plus. CompTIA does consider Network Plus to be a step above A Plus, so they tend to consider this an associate level cert, and I tend to agree. I think that it's a little bit much for an entry level, but it is, after all, vendor agnostic, which means heavier focus on theory, not nearly as much focus on the ability to do anything with that theory. By far, the most heavily recommended certification for anyone looking to get into networking has to be the Cisco Certified Network Associate Cert, or the CCNA. CCNA is an associate level cert and is now the lowest level certification that Cisco offers. Once upon a time, Cisco did offer the CCENT, Cisco Certified Entry Network Technician. However, this was recently deprecated and as of February of this year is completely gone. The CCNA certification used to be 6 different certifications, which have now been combined into one. So it's extremely broad spectrum, and as such, Cisco had to take a lot of the practical hands-on skills out in order to throw more theory in. This does give you a much more rounded idea of what computer networking is, and you still end up with a decent exposure to the Cisco Inter-Network Operating System, iOS. This is the mainline command line interface used by Cisco and is one of the most heavily recognized operating systems when it comes to networking. Not every company uses Cisco, but they're definitely one of the most popular, if not the most popular, in the United States and worldwide. As such, a Cisco CCNA cert is still an extremely powerful tool to have in your resume as a means of helping get a foot in the door for an interview. Another alternative or addition to the CCNA that you might pursue is the Juniper Networks JNCIA, Juniper Networks Certified Inter-Network Associate. Where Cisco tends to focus a lot of their energy on customers who are building LANs, Juniper tends to focus a large amount of their energy on internet service providers and cellular providers. As such, Juniper's JNCIA cert actually tends to cover a lot more topics specific to internet service providers than local area networks. As such, this does a great job at filling in a lot of the knowledge gaps now present in the CCNA certification by covering a lot of the things that you would need to know if you were working in an internet service provider type organization, or if you work closely with internet service providers. The JNCIA cert is an associate level cert just like Cisco, and in my opinion, the JNCIA is probably the easiest certification exam that I ever took. That doesn't mean that it's easy. You still have to study if you want to take this exam, but it does a great job at complementing the Cisco CCNA certification while giving you a decent exposure to the Juniper operating system, or Junos. Of course, these are just the entry-level certifications. Both of these have professional level certifications and others above those. There are also certifications for other networking providers such as Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Dell, and I could go on, but those are the big ones that the most people request when it comes to hiring a new network technician. Maybe networking's not your thing and you've decided that cybersecurity is where your heart is. Well, you're in luck. There is an absolute butt ton of certs for cybersecurity, so let's get into them. First and foremost, the gold standard of cybersecurity entry-level certification is the CompTIA Security Plus Cert. CompTIA Security Plus is considered an associate level cert, although it is generally considered to be a step above the CompTIA Net Plus, which is also kind of considered an associate level. Security Plus is a more difficult exam than the Network Plus based off of simple statistics when we can get bootleg statistics off of pass and fail rates. This gives you a nice broad spectrum understanding of the cybersecurity field and a number of concepts such as different types of malware, different types of attacks, and mitigation strategies. There are a couple of what might be considered professional level cybersecurity certs from CompTIA. The first is the Pentest Plus Cert, and just as its name implies, this is a certification that is specific to penetration testing. This is for individuals who want to take the offensive side of cybersecurity, which is to attempt to break into networks while being paid for it, and being able to turn around and tell the people how you managed to break in or whether the security was sufficient to keep you out. This is usually referred to as ethical hacking or white hat hacking. Unfortunately, this is not the largest field in cybersecurity and is in fact a small subset of the cybersecurity field. So the Pentest Plus Cert is extremely specialized and should only be used if that's exactly what you want to do. Instead, the much more in-demand certification that I would recommend is the CompTIA CISA exam, CISA being short for Cybersecurity Analyst. The Cybersecurity Analyst is the defensive side of cybersecurity and is where the vast majority of the 800,000 unfilled cybersecurity jobs rests in the United States. This is your average day-to-day cybersecurity task, whether it's dealing with regulatory compliance, whether it's going through logs and monitoring, whether it's doing network scans. All of these types of job tasks are covered in the CISA exam, and it actually gets fairly in-depth. You need to have a decent working knowledge of a lot of open source cybersecurity tools, such as Nessus, Wireshark, Nmap. I could go on, but that is a great certification for anyone looking to specialize in cybersecurity. The CISA cert might not be required for anyone who's just trying to get their foot in the door, but definitely one if you're trying to make yourself indispensable or an instant shoo-in for a lot of positions. Finally, in addition to these certifications, you can also use a lot of specialization type of certifications to build on top of these. Networking branches such as the Cisco CCNP or the Juniper JNCP have security specific branches built into them. So you can go for a Cisco network security specialization or a Juniper network security or specialization. You can also go for a vendor-specific certification for firewall or UTM providers, such as F5 Networks or Palo Alto Networks, which both have their own certification branches. Or you can go with other vendor-neutral certifications which can build on top of these specializations, such as you can add the Linux Plus certification, which Linux is an extremely huge deal in cybersecurity because, you know, Microsoft sucks horribly. I didn't say that, don't sue me, Microsoft. Where were we? So what would be some certifications that I would recommend for someone who's trying to get their foot in the door on their IT career? One method that I like to recommend is what I personally call the CompTIA Trifecta, which is the CompTIA A Plus, the CompTIA Net Plus, and the CompTIA Sec Plus certifications. These three give you a great groundwork when it comes to the IT field as a whole, and they basically give you a jumping off point in any of these fields, whether you want to just work as a help desk technician fixing broken computers and helping customers all day long, or whether you want to be a computer network engineer and you need to know how to properly build a network and do it securely and safely, whether you want to work in cybersecurity and you need to know how data moves around your network and how computers are set up. These are all great foundational knowledge pieces that I highly recommend that anyone who works in IT gets. After you have your trifecta, it's usually a great way to just have to get one more cert and jump into whatever specialization you want. Whether you decide to jump into the Cisco networking field or the Juniper networking field, whether you want to jump into the Palo Alto firewall administration field, or whether you want to be an F5 cloud security expert. By going with this vendor-neutral approach at first and going with vendor-specific later on, it is a great way for you to get your foot in the door and become a specialist later on down the line. It also gives you a good jumping out point if you decide you really don't like working in networking. As long as you've maintained your trifecta, then you can just go get another cert in one of these other fields and instantly transition to a different career field. As a person who currently maintains 13 network certifications? Yeah, I have no life. And at this point in his career has worked in basically every one of these specializations. It definitely comes with its own advantages. And while it may be pretty expensive to set up at first, it definitely gives you the freedom to choose where you want to go in the IT industry. And if you're just looking for some resume padding, there is kind of a gimme cert I want to let you guys in on. It's called the Fortinet Networks Network Security Expert Certification. The NSC certification branch has 7 levels, levels 1 through 7, and levels 1 through 2 are available absolutely free. All you have to do is go to the Fortinet Learning Portal, set up a free account with them, and sign up for the NSC Level 1 and NSC Level 2 courses. You can knock both of these out in a single afternoon, and boom, you have Network Security Expert Level 2 on your resume. Now, anyone who knows anything about this cert will just sit there and go, that's useless. There's basically no usable level of knowledge there. It's a great introduction to cybersecurity, especially like it's kind of what I wish the general public knew about cybersecurity. But as far as working in the field, it's useless. And you're not permitted to go above level 2 unless you work for Fortinet or sell Fortinet products. So NSC level 3 and above is gated off to you. But again, if you're just looking for free resume padding, there it is for you. If you have any of the certifications that I mentioned here, or if there are any that I didn't mention that you feel should be added to this list, feel free to drop them in the comments below. As usual, feel free to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this with your friends so that I can get the word out to more people. The more engagement we have on my videos, the more likely the YouTube algorithm is to recommend it to other people and for this channel to grow and become a great resource for everyone involved. As always, this has been Brainmelt University. You have an amazing day, and I will see you all here later.